Welcome to Cybersecurity HQ's Daily News Report for November 13th, 2024. It's a busy day on the cybersecurity front.
Definitely.
Lots to cover today, so let's jump right in. Google Cloud has decided to start assigning CVEs.
Oh, yeah. Big news. They're joining Microsoft and AWS in assigning CVE identifiers to all vulnerabilities, even the ones that don't need an immediate patch.
So for our listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly does that mean?
So CVE stands for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. It's basically a universal language for talking about security threats.
So by assigning these CVEs,
Right. It's all about transparency. They're making it easier for everyone to track, understand, and fix potential security risks, no matter if a patch is available yet or not. It's about giving users the full picture.
I see, so it's all about being proactive.
Absolutely.
And to make things even clearer, Google Cloud is also using this new exclusively hosted service tag.
Right. That's to help users figure out which vulnerabilities they actually need to worry about so they can focus on the ones that directly affect them. Makes things a lot more efficient.
Yeah. Now, on a more concerning note, we've seen a surge in zero-day exploits this past year, particularly targeting Citrix, Cisco, and Fortinet. What can you tell us about zero-day exploits?
A zero-day exploit targets a vulnerability that the software vendor doesn't even know about yet.
Oh, wow, so no time to prepare.
Exactly, and that means there's no patch available, so systems are basically sitting ducks until the vendor can scramble and release a fix. The problem is attackers are getting faster and more sophisticated. We saw some vulnerabilities exploited mere days after they were discovered. That's hardly any time to react.
That sounds scary.
It is. It's a race against time, you know? The quicker we patch, the less likely it is to be exploited. But the speed at which these 0 days are being discovered and weaponized, well, it's a tough challenge to keep up.
I can imagine. Are there any organizations working to combat this?
Well, you've got groups like the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. They're playing a crucial role here.
Remind me, who's in that again?
It's Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, and the US. They're working together to track these threats, share information, and try to mitigate the risks.
That's good. A united front. Speaking of patching, both Intel and AMD had a busy November, releasing a bunch of security patches. Intel tackled over 80 vulnerabilities, including some high-severity ones affecting Xeon processors, and AMD focused on flaws in Ryzen Master Utility and addressed a SEV side channel attack.
Yep, it's a constant back and forth. Chip manufacturers trying to stay one step ahead of the attackers.
Like a never-ending game of cat and mouse.
Exactly. As chip architectures get more complex, the potential for vulnerabilities just keeps growing. Both Intel and AMD are doing their best to address these issues quickly, but it's a constant race.
And what about Ivanti? I heard they also had a busy month.
Oh yeah, they patched almost 50 vulnerabilities across their products, some with a CVSS score of 9.8. That's pretty serious.
Can you explain that for our listeners? What does a CVSS score mean, and why is 9.8 so bad?
Sure, so CVSS stands for Common Vulnerability Scoring System. It's a way to communicate how bad a vulnerability is. And a 9.8, well, that means those vulnerabilities could potentially allow for remote code execution and privilege escalation. Basically, attackers could take control of systems from anywhere in the world.
Wow, so pretty much the worst-case scenario.
Pretty much, especially with flaws in Connect Secure, Policy Secure, and Endpoint Manager. Those are used in a lot of enterprise environments, so the stakes are high.
So patching is definitely a top priority here.
Absolutely. But it's not just enterprise software that needs attention. We also saw updates for Zoom and Chrome.
Yeah, seems like everything needs constant updating these days.
Right. Zoom fixed 6 vulnerabilities, some pretty serious ones dealing with privilege escalation and information leakage. And Chrome tackled 12, including a critical flaw in its blink rendering engine. It just goes to show staying up to date is so important, even for the everyday apps we use.
I guess we take those updates for granted sometimes.
It's easy to do, but those updates are crucial. It's one of the easiest ways to protect yourself from cyber attacks.
Simple but effective.
Yeah.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about some nation-state activity. There have been reports of Chinese state-sponsored hackers going after Tibetan websites.
Yeah, they were using malware disguised as a security certificate.
So sneaky.
It's sadly not surprising, though. It fits right in with China's history of targeting dissident groups and individuals they see as a threat.
And it highlights the fact that these attackers are getting more sophisticated in their methods.
Absolutely. You've got to be extra careful these days.
And it's not just China. We've also got news about Volt Typhoon, another Chinese state-sponsored group.
They're known for being pretty stealthy, really good at maintaining access to networks once they're in.
And what have they been up to?
It seems they've rebuilt their botnet infrastructure, using compromised routers no less.
That's not good. What are the implications of that?
Well, there are concerns about potential espionage and disruptions to critical infrastructure. Volt Typhoon has been linked to attacks on U.S. infrastructure in the past, so this is definitely a red flag.
It seems like the threat from these nation-state actors is constantly evolving.
It is, and staying ahead of them is a real challenge. And then there's Salt Typhoon, another Chinese group.
What have they been up to?
They breached U.S. telecom providers, gaining access to government officials' communications and stealing customer data.
That's serious. Were they able to stay hidden for long?
It seems they had access for months before being detected. It really shows how difficult it can be to detect and respond to these advanced, persistent threats.
It's a reminder that even organizations with strong security measures can still be vulnerable.
Exactly. Nobody is immune. And attributing these attacks to specific groups, like nation-states, can be tricky.
It's not always clear-cut.
No, but in the case of Salt Typhoon, there's pretty strong evidence pointing to the Chinese government.
It's a concerning trend, this use of cyber attacks as a tool in geopolitical conflicts.
Absolutely. We're seeing it more and more. It's not just about stealing data or disrupting services anymore. It's about achieving political and strategic goals.
And that brings us to another alarming incident, the Hamas-affiliated group White.
Yeah, they seem to have shifted tactics, moving away from espionage and towards more destructive attacks.
What are they using?
Wiper malware. Specifically, they used SameCoin against Israeli targets.
Can you explain what wiper malware is?
It's pretty nasty. It's designed to erase data from the systems it infects, causing massive damage and disruption. This incident with Wicher really shows their growing capabilities and their intent to cause harm.
It's another example of cyber attacks being used in conflicts.
Sadly, yes.
Wow.
The cyber conflict between Israel and Hamas has been escalating, and this use of wiper malware is a worrying development.
Shifting to a different type of threat, there's a new malware technique targeting Mac OS users.
Yeah, this one's pretty sneaky. They're abusing extended file attributes to hide malicious code.
So what does that mean exactly?
They're basically hiding malicious code within seemingly harmless PDF documents. It makes it really hard for traditional security measures to pick it up.
That's clever. Do we know who's behind it?
Researchers have linked it to the Lazarus Group. That's a North Korean group known for their advanced skills and financial motivations.
They've been involved in some pretty big attacks before, haven't they?
Oh yeah, the WannaCry ransomware attack and the Sony Pictures hack, just to name a couple. They're a serious threat. This new technique is just another example of how attackers are constantly innovating. We've got to stay vigilant.
Always on our toes. We've also got news of a big data breach at Demand Science, a BDB aggregator.
Yeah, they exposed business contact info for over 122 million people. A reminder that data breaches can happen to anyone, no matter how big or small you are. It's crucial to have strong security in place.
And if our listeners are worried about their data, are there any resources they can check?
Absolutely. Websites like Have I Been Pwned are great for that. Just enter your email address and it'll tell you if you've been caught up in any known data breaches.
Good to know. On the patching front, Microsoft addressed a zero-day vulnerability that was being actively exploited.
This one's particularly critical. It was being used by Russian hackers targeting Ukrainian organizations.
So pretty high stakes.
Yeah, Microsoft released a patch, but it's urgent that organizations apply it as soon as possible, especially those operating in or supporting Ukraine.
Given the ongoing conflict, they're prime targets.
Exactly. It's a clear reminder that cybersecurity is very much tied to real-world events. We need to be aware of those connections and take the right precautions.
And finally, some more concerning news for users of D-Link NAS devices.
Specifically, end-of-life models. There's an unpatched vulnerability that's being actively exploited.
And because they're end of life, there's no fix coming.
Right, which makes them particularly vulnerable. And to make matters worse, the exploit code is publicly available. Attackers are having a field day with this one.
So what can users do?
The best advice is to retire or upgrade those devices immediately. Holding on to end-of-life devices is just asking for trouble. They're often full of vulnerabilities just waiting to be exploited.
That's a good point. Now, let's end on a more positive note. I heard there's been some good news for ransomware victims.
Yes, Bitdefender released a decryptor for the ShrinkLocker ransomware.
And what does ShrinkLocker do?
It uses BitLocker encryption to lock victims out of their files. But this decryptor, it lets victims recover their passwords and get their systems back without paying the ransom.
That's great news.
Yeah.
A real win for the good guys.
It is. It shows that there's always hope, even in the face of these attacks. It's so important to act quickly and use the resources available to fight back against ransomware.
So never give up hope. There are people and organizations out there working hard to help.
Absolutely. The cybersecurity community is constantly developing new tools and techniques to combat cybercrime.
That's reassuring to hear.
It is. It's a lot to keep up with, for sure. And, it's not just the software side of things. This month also brought us ICS Patch Tuesday.
ICS Patch Tuesday.
Right. That's when all the industrial control system vendors release their security updates, for critical infrastructure.
Oh, right, of course. So
Yeah.
like power grids, water treatment plants, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Essential services. So keeping those systems secure is absolutely critical.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What were some of the key updates this time around?
Well, Siemens had a bunch. They addressed vulnerabilities in their telecontrol server basic and Senac INS products. Those are pretty widely used in industrial automation and control systems.
So pretty high impact if those were exploited.
Definitely. Any vulnerability in those systems could have major real-world consequences. Schneider Electric also patched some critical flaws in their EcoStruxure IT gateway.
And what does that system do?
It's used for managing IT infrastructure in industrial environments. So it's not just the operational technology itself that's at risk, but the systems used to manage it as well.
Right, because it's all interconnected these days.
Exactly. And Rockwell Automation, they had some updates too for their Factory Talk platforms. That's a whole suite of industrial automation software.
So a lot of activity from the major ICS vendors.
It just shows you how much of a challenge it is to keep these systems secure. It's a constant battle. And to add to that, CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, also issued advisories for some pretty serious flaws.
What kind of flaws?
They found vulnerabilities in operational technology device management systems.
I'm not familiar with those. What do they do?
These systems are used to manage and monitor devices in industrial environments. The problem is, if those systems are compromised, attackers could gain control of critical infrastructure. It's a reminder that every single component, from the devices themselves to the management systems, needs to be secure.
So it's a very complex ecosystem to protect.
It is. And because everything's so interconnected, a compromise in one system could have a domino effect, impacting all sorts of critical services.
No room for error.
Nope. You need a multi-layered approach. Regular patching, network segmentation, intrusion detection systems, you name it.
So it's not just about reacting to threats, but actively preventing them as well.
Exactly. Proactive security is key.
It's been a wild ride through the world of cybersecurity today.
It really has. Seems like every day brings a new threat to worry about. Software flaws, nation-state activity, you name it.
It's a lot to keep track of. That's why resources like Cybersecurity HQ are so important.
Absolutely. People need a reliable source of information.
A place to stay informed and get those insights to navigate this ever-changing landscape.
Exactly. Whether you're a cybersecurity veteran or just starting out, Cybersecurity HQ has something for you.
It's a community where you can learn, connect with others, and share your experiences, and for those looking for new opportunities in the field.
Our job board has got you covered. We've got listings from some of the top cybersecurity companies out there.
And don't forget our weekly newsletter. It's packed with curated insights and practical advice, delivered straight to your inbox.
We're passionate about cybersecurity here at Cybersecurity HQ. We're committed to giving our community the very best resources.
So until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay connected with Cybersecurity HQ.
Remember, knowledge is power, especially in the world of cybersecurity.